Hey everyone, and welcome to another GameXplain discussion. I'm your host, Derek Bittner, and I'm joined today by Ash Paulson to discuss his recent playtime with both Fire Emblem Warriors and Skyrim at PAX West. So let's get started. Alright Ash, so yeah, you got to play two of these upcoming Nintendo Switch games. One is pretty old and has been out for a while on every other system imaginable, it seems like, while Fire Emblem Warriors is of course a new take on the Dynasty Warriors formula with Fire Emblem characters that's getting mixed reactions. So yeah, which one would you like to talk about first?
Let's go ahead and talk about Skyrim, since I feel like we've talked about that less than Fire Emblem Warriors overall.
Yes. So yeah, we've known about Skyrim ever since the reveal of the Switch, because that was one of the games being played on it, and of course we finally got more information. And I gotta say, there seems to be some excitement for it, because every time we post a video about it, it does do quite well, which is still shocking to me considering it's... How old is this game now? Like 3 or 4 years, right?
I honestly don't remember. I think it's more than 4 years, and I think some of that excitement has to do with prior to this, people didn't know if the Switch version would be based on the special edition, I guess the complete version, or the original vanilla version of Skyrim, and it looks as if the Switch version is based on the complete edition. So I guess that's going to come with whatever new content and improved graphics that the special edition had.
Yeah. And it's a great fit just because, you've being able to take it on the go other than like a laptop. This is a little easier to carry around than a laptop.
Right, which is, that's, you kind of get that same innate appeal there that you had with Breath of the Wild if you're into really, huge open world adventure games, because you've got this massive world that you can literally take with you and play wherever you want, which is just conceptually very cool. And by the way, I looked it up, and it came out in November 2011, so it's 6 years old.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
I can't believe it's been that long. It feels like this game's just been around forever.
It does.
It's crazy. But yeah, so I guess, did you ever play the original Skyrim, or did you skip it? Because I know it's not quite your thing. Like, we've talked before about how open world games aren't really your thing. So did you ever play the original?
I did very briefly, and I watched a couple of my buddies at the time play like the opening hours, and it basically, wherever you start off in Skyrim, you start off in this cave or prison or something, but there are giant tarantulas that attack you, and Skyrim is at least partially a first-person game. So that was enough. Once we got to that point, I decided I'd had enough of Skyrim, and I just didn't really have any reason to play a game like that. Now, thankfully, either by luck or by chance, I did not run into any, by luck or by direction, I did not run into any giant spiders in my demo. However, I did manage to stumble upon a cave full of like vampire soldiers and wizards that very quickly killed me. I made it about halfway into the cave, and then I just got these like 4 vampires descended on me, and that was it.
Overwhelmed you.
Yeah. Yeah. But that was something that I just stumbled upon, which is why I brought that up, was because, Skyrim does have that appeal where you strike out into any direction you want, like in Breath of the Wild, and you find what you find. I found some what apparently was very good equipment for my level, according to the Nintendo rep who was kind of guiding me through the demo. And he's like, "Hey, cool! I've never found that equipment before. That's really strong for where you are." And I'm like, "Oh, cool!" And I just stumbled upon it. So there is a ton of that in Skyrim.
Yeah, that's I think the appeal is just like nobody really cares about the main storyline because they just go out and do whatever, see all the side quests and whatnot. Even though I hear the main storyline is okay, and you want to go through it at least a little bit so you can get your dragon powers. So I'm guessing they did not start you at the beginning of the game.
No, fortunately they did not. I basically got to start outside of this cave, and I basically could go in any direction I want. It was the overworld, I was outside, and I went in one direction, died after, getting into some shenanigans, and I respawned and went into a different direction. Much kind of like how we were kind of trying to do our initial coverage of Breath of the Wild's Great Plateau, where we all picked a direction because there was so much to see.
Yeah, just go wherever and see what you can see. It's kind of crazy. So how did it feel? I mean, did you notice any stuttering at all? Because, people always still kind of question the power of the Switch, and I know that, the game's 6 years old. Should be able to run it just fine, correct?
Yeah, and it does, generally. It's 30 frames per second, so of course, it's not a full 60, but I don't feel as if Skyrim necessarily needs that. It's not the kind of game that really needs a full 60 frames per second, and from what I remember, it was a stable 30. I didn't notice too many instances of... I don't think I even really noticed any instances of slowdown or choppiness. It was a stable demo. But you can tell that it's a 7-year-old game. It's it's not ugly. It's a fine looking game, but it's definitely aged. And I wouldn't go into it expecting a level of graphical polish anywhere near something like Breath of the Wild, for example.
Yeah.
So of course, but there again, Breath of the Wild may look a lot better, but it has performance issues. So you give a little and you take a little. But yeah, I mean, it looked nice, but you can definitely tell that it is of its era.
Yeah, absolutely. So still, that's good to see that they can handle the game just fine. And now, did you play it in TV mode or in handheld mode, or I guess tabletop?
I played
mode?
it in TV mode.
Okay, so you didn't get to see it running on the Switch's screen, which
no, I didn't, unfortunately. Yeah, so I played on TV mode with the Joy-Con grip.
Okay, and I'm guessing you didn't get a chance to. Did you get a chance to try out the motion controls they talked about that seemed completely superfluous?
No, I didn't actually, now that I think about it.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to. I was honestly too busy trying to just figure out the controls, period. It may be because I'm a Skyrim newbie, but I was just doing all sorts of things that I did not mean to do. Now, again, remember, I had 30 minutes to play the game, and I basically have never played Skyrim, so I was, basically learning a lot all at once, but you definitely can feel like, I don't know, I feel like they did a good job translating Skyrim's control scheme over to the Switch, but it's definitely, there is a high learning curve in terms of, which buttons bring up the menu, and the fact that, you don't have to use the face buttons to make menu selections. You can just press right on the analog stick to go into the next menu. Mm-hmm. So it's very much, there's just a bit of a learning curve to figure out the controls, but I also feel like if you're a Skyrim veteran, it'll be a lot easier.
Yeah, it'll be no issues whatsoever.
Yeah.
So that's cool to hear. I can't really think of any, we're talking about a 6-year-old game, so it's hard to imagine new things. I'm guessing you didn't get to see the new Zelda content that was in there, like the outfits and the Master Sword and all that, right?
No, although we tried. It wasn't for lack of trying. They actually set us up with 3 amiibo, and the way amiibo work in Skyrim is basically almost exactly the same as in Breath of the Wild, where you scan it, you equip your amiibo spell, you target a place on the ground in front of you, you scan your amiibo, and a treasure chest appears. And one of the coolest thing about that is when the treasure chest does appear, you get the classic Zelda,
the dun-dun-dun-dun.
puzzle. No, actually the other one, the figured out a puzzle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the which sounds awful, but that one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you get that, which I thought was pretty cool. And we tried. There were 3 amiibo to use, and none of them yielded the Zelda gear. So,
that's a bummer.
Unfortunately, nothing. But I did get a bundle of carrots from one, so that was nice.
Yay.
I think the Metroid amiibo, the squishy one, gave me a bundle of carrots. I'm like, well, thank you, Metroid, I guess.
Yeah, I guess that
Not
works.
Not quite what I wanted. Yeah, and just like in Zelda, you can use each amiibo you have once per day, so there is a limitation there to make sure you're not just, spamming amiibo items all day.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I guess other things I noticed as I was playing is, as I was exploring, and, I guess you shouldn't necessarily expect this because Breath of the Wild is so singular in this sense, but there are practical limits to where you can go. So, at least for the early part of the game where I was in. So, I saw a giant mountain peak, and I'm like, oh, you know what? This is an open world game. Breath of the Wild, I could climb that mountain. Let's see if I can climb that mountain. Well, you can't.
No.
At least not with the skills I had. I got about halfway up, and then there was just a point at which my character would not jump anymore. Mm. And so I think, there are practical limits, like there are in most open world games, which I don't feel... I feel like it would be unfair to judge Skyrim for that because Zelda did that so uniquely.
Yeah, and, again, there's a bit of an age difference between...
Exactly, yeah, totally.
Yeah, so that's cool. I mean, it's what to be expected. I mean, if you played Skyrim, that's what you can expect here on Switch. And if you haven't played Skyrim, that's awesome. That's a great way to finally experience the game with all of its content included and looking a little better, potentially, it seems like. Plus, on the go, so... I don't know if I would call the Switch version the definitive version of the game, but at least it's a good choice. It seems like from what I'm hearing.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't seem to be just the vanilla version of the game with no bells and whistles. I think there's definitely it's at least a version of the special edition with the. I was reading about some of it just to do some research, and I think the special edition improved the graphics in some ways and just added some new effects and touches and new features, and those things, as far as I understand it, are reflected in the Switch version. Mm. I also want to mention that I think this would be a game that's particularly well suited to playing with headphones, like in handheld mode, because what I did notice was that combat, especially in first-person view, is very, visceral. The sounds are very, crunchy and squishy. Like, when you hit something with your sword, it sounds like, you're driving your sword into something fleshy, and it's kind of nasty, but it works, and it makes combat feel very visceral. So I think this is something people are really going to enjoy with on handheld mode with headphones. It's really, the sound design is great.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm totally down for that.
Yeah, and I guess one other positive thing is I would say, again, another comparison to Breath of the Wild. You know how it's so fun to watch someone play Breath of the Wild because it's so easy to get into trouble and watch all sorts of comical things ensue as you're as you very quickly get in over your head. Mm-hmm. Well, that happened to me several times, and the funniest version, which you can see kind of play out in the footage we uploaded, was that I accidentally angered a troll. I don't know if it was a troll or something, but it was a giant, nasty monster that was going to one-shot
Then it was probably a giant.
Yeah, so
giant.
So it was one of them.
Yep.
So I did not mean I didn't see him, but I think I either one of my shots barely grazed him or maybe landed near him, but that was enough. And so he started following me. I aggroed him, and I just started running away. And every time I turned around, he was still pursuing me. And I think I got caught up on the environment or something, and immediately got one-shotted, and my character went flying across the environment. It was hilarious, and I feel like that kind of accidental, just comedic mishaps are going to happen all the time in Skyrim.
Absolutely. So yeah, something to look forward to if you're still interested in Skyrim on the Switch. But how about Fire Emblem Warriors? What'd you think of your playtime with that?
I think the same as what I thought when I played it previously at E3 and such, which is it's fun. I mean, it's basically like a more complex Hyrule Warriors that draws upon more specific elements from the Fire Emblem series, but it's not so much more complex that you have, a hard time figuring it out. It just allows for things like pairing up characters, or there's there's like an awakening attack that you can do, which I assume is probably a reference to the name Fire Emblem Awakening, because it was named something else in Hyrule Warriors, I believe.
Oh, so, they always have different names in these games.
And so there, you can pair up characters to do pair up attacks, and I think pairing up characters also, increases their stats while they're paired up, but you can't control them individually. So it is a very Fire Emblem take on mechanics you would see, in an actual Fire Emblem game.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you got to try out a few of the newer characters as well, correct?
Yeah, so I got to play as, Camilla, Takumi,
Hinoka and Xander.
Yeah, Xander and Hinoka. And all of them were a lot of fun. I gotta say, I never finished Fire Emblem Fates, but of course I played quite a bit of it. I know all the characters. I know they're not the most popular characters, I get that, but in terms of just playing as them, they're a lot of fun. Like Camilla, and I would say actually really all of them. Hinoka's probably the one that was the least interesting to me, but she was even, she's riding her Pegasus. She's a Pegasus Knight, so you get all these airborne attacks from the, where she's riding her Pegasus, and that's really cool. Mm-hmm. But the other three characters I thought were much cooler. Takumi, true to Takumi and everything he's been in, feels so OP. His crazy bow attacks are insane. He's got these really cool combos that just completely demolish waves of enemies, and Takumi's just cool. I've always liked him. He was OP when I was playing Fates. He's OP in my Fire Emblem Heroes party, and he feels super strong here. And he's got all sorts of cool range attacks, and he can fire arrows in 360 degrees super fast. Really cool. And then Camilla, she feels super powerful. I love that she's a dragon rider, and she's just got these mighty axe attacks, and she feels as powerful as she actually is, and she's just a lot of fun to play. She's got these huge sweeping area of effect attacks that were a lot of fun, and just really, the characters feel crazy strong in the way that Warriors characters always do. But I have to give special mention to Xander, because even though I can't stand him in Fates because I played Birthright, and so he was always a prick to me, God, I love playing as him in Warriors, because Epona has got some work to do. Xander's horse is the coolest gaming horse. That horse is just jumping up 10 feet in the air every second, doing crazy backflips and all these attacks that no horse should ever be able to do. And I love it. We were just, during my demo appointment, we were all laughing at how unbelievably ridiculous Xander's horse is and what it's capable of. He's so cool. That's
awesome. That's the thing that keeps striking me, is that the gameplay of Fire Emblem Warriors looks great. It sounds like it plays great. There's interesting systems in there as far as the pair-up system, and everybody comes away from playing it, feels great. It's the character selection every time that always gets them into trouble. However, right before we recorded this, the news came out, not news, but people were looking at the Famitsu site, and we did the update on it about history mode, and now it makes a little bit more sense about why they just focused on those few characters, as history mode is sort of a retelling of their games with their characters, and it's sort of how adventure mode was in Hyrule Warriors, where you had these sort of extra scenarios and extended the gameplay beyond just story mode. And so it makes sense that we have all the siblings in there and everything else as a sort of retellings. Obviously, you didn't get to try that out, but there's our reasoning, as much as it might suck.
Right, exactly. But but on that note, I will say that one thing I thought was cool was, and I guess you'd probably expect this, but no matter who you're playing as, like when I was playing as Xander, one of the enemy commanders I had to fight was Leo. And there was specific dialogue for Leo and Xander fighting each other, which I assume would be different if I were playing as like Hinoka or somebody. Mm-hmm. So I really do like that they, paid that much attention in terms of having conversations between characters that make sense in context. Like Leo says something to Xander along the lines of, "Oh, brother, I've always wanted to test my powers against you. Now it's time," something like that. But I like that it's specific to their relationship, which is again emblematic of Fire Emblem in itself.
Yeah. That's really cool. I think that's where I think the relationships between these characters might be the thing that saves this lineup. Seeing how they interact, hopefully have some funny dialogue between them, do something, go that extra mile to make people really care about them. Now, I'm actually curious what you think about. I know you likely didn't get to see this in the demo, but the thing is, we've played this demo so many times, and there's really not much else to say about it beyond that. Now, you've heard of the whole classic versus casual mode for this game, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, where if you lose a character, they're dead for good. And,
which I'm curious as to how that works in the context of a Warriors game, but yeah, I have heard about that.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how that is, too, because, that's quite punishing. Of course, I'm sure it has the other option of, hey, they died, you can restart. Try again. Try again without losing a character. Which definitely puts some pressure on you, especially when you have to juggle multiple characters and you can't let anyone fall behind. So I can see that being fun in its own crazy way. And of course, you get the classic gameplay with casual. But how do you feel about that?
I mean, I think it's great that you have the option. I'm one of those people who always thinks more options is better, because if you don't like an option, well, you don't have to use it. So I feel like having more options, pleases the most number of people possible, and why not do that? So I don't know if I would use that myself, just because I'm very specific about the games I want to feel stressed out during. I'm okay being stressed out during a Mega Man game because platformers are my bread and butter, but I don't know if I necessarily want to be stressed out during a Warriors game, because I'm fine at them, but I kind of look at Warriors games as kind of just a stress release. Like, I just want to go mow down thousands of enemies and just bask in how cool that looks, but I'm not necessarily trying to play it technically perfectly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand that. That makes a lot of sense. It's probably something I'm going to try out and see how I feel about it, and see how it feels in any one way. But yeah, I'm curious how they do handle the deaths. I'm guessing it's going to be like how you get main character deaths in other games, where I can't fight for you anymore, but I'm going to still be around here for the cutscenes.
Right, and my guess is probably the two new characters. I can't remember their names at the moment, but the blonde siblings. Mm-hmm. I assume that neither one of them can die. I assume that if either of them dies in permadeath mode, then that's a game over.
Yeah, that'd be my guess as well. So it's still interesting. Like I'm curious about the game. I want it to be good. That's the thing.
Yeah, no, me too. I mean, just from a pure gameplay standpoint, again, I have fun every time I play this game. Like, I feel like I'm probably going to go out and pick it up, even though I'm not a hardcore Fire Emblem fan, because paradoxically, I don't care that the characters are mostly from Fates and Awakening. I just care that this is a fun game, and I've played Awakening and Fates enough to know that I'm cool. I'm fine with these characters. Like, I'm sure I'd be upset if I was a Legacy Fire Emblem fan, and I do feel bad for hardcore fans because they're not getting those old games represented. But for someone like me, I mean, the game's fun. The gameplay holds up very nicely. I really enjoyed Hyrule Warriors. I feel like I'm going to enjoy this in the same way. And I do want to mention, I didn't get to see the choose between the two different graphical styles or two different resolutions, but I wish I had, because one thing I am slightly concerned by is that just a month out from release, or a month or so, the game is still pretty choppy, at least in 1080p. Like, there's definitely some optimization that still needs to be done. I mean, it's a good-looking game, but the frame rate definitely chugs when things get too crazy. And if, you know, there is going to be an option for 720p, 60 frames per second, I really wish they would show that off, because I actually think the game is probably going to look better in that setting.
That could be.
Yeah.
Something I'll have to experiment with to see exactly how it all plays out, because, yeah, and hopefully it's another case of just an early build and something better is coming along. But they have put out quite a few of these different demos, unless it's all the same demo and they just like, here's these characters unlocked for this demo, that kind of thing.
Right. And that's why I'm like slightly concerned, only because it is just a month out, and you know, I assume when they say 720p 60 frames per second, they mean solid. You know, it's a solid 60 without dropping and stuttering. But, you know, I played it in the 1080p 30 frames mode, but that was not a solid 30 frames per second by any stretch of the imagination. So, you know, I'm not going to get too technical. It's, you know, it's not as if every game has to have a perfectly stable frame rate, but for a game like a Warriors game, which relies on precise, you know, inputs and button timings, you know, you want to minimize the stuttering as much as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And as far as the legacy characters, like, I agree. Like, I wish there would be more. The history mode softens that blow a little bit as far as the purpose behind choosing the characters that they did. But they also, of course, like, we know, like, we saw what they did with Hyrule Warriors and how they supported that game and kept DLC coming. Looking at history mode, there is no way they're not going to, like, I can totally see them being like, here's 3 or 4 new characters from this game and a new history mode map for them. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which would be a cool way to continue to support the game, honestly. I mean, it sucks that it's not in the game itself, but hey, it gives me a reason to use these characters and see what they can do and all that.
Well, and yeah, and it may be that they, you know, they wanted to go for, you know, grabbing as many current fans as possible with the, you know, with the lineup they have, and then should sales, you know, be as brisk as they would like, then expand the roster with some of the more legacy characters that older, you know, more longtime fans want to see. Which is, you know, I can understand that approach. I just wish there was a slightly better balance to begin with. But, you know, on the other side of that, I do appreciate that, you know, the fact that they use a lot more of the recent characters that were, you know, fully voiced means that you get that continuity. Like, from what I heard, all the voices from Fates returned for Fire Emblem Warriors for the same characters.
That's good.
I can't say that for sure, but, you know, just going off of memory, what I remember them sounding like in Fates, they all sounded exactly the same, and I love that kind of audio continuity when you have character voices. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I hope that's the case. I didn't get to hear their voices too often. Like, they don't stand out to me as much because you only got them during cutscenes. It's not like Fire Emblem Echoes where it was fully voiced, which is what I want now. But that's the thing. With this game, they are fully voiced, so hopefully the acting is pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, from what I heard, it's very good in a very anime way. So, you know, if you're cool with competent anime style voice acting, well, that's exactly what you're getting here. And, you know, but if you don't like your games to be too anime, then this, you know, may be a little too anime for you. But it's Fire Emblem, you know what you're getting into,
yeah,
right?
Pretty much. I mean, it's definitely going to be anime.
And it's especially modern Fire Emblem, so, yeah.
Yep. Well, any other thoughts on your time with Fire Emblem Warriors?
I just really want to underscore how badass Xander's horse is. Like, he, in my opinion, was the star of that roster. That whole roster, Xander's horse is so cool. And I absolutely encourage you to go check out our footage of it, because we were all just laughing in the demo appointment about how ridiculous that is.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Alright, well, I think that covers it for our Fire Emblem and Skyrim discussion, so thank you for watching, and if you like this video, be sure to like us on Facebook and Twitter at GameXplain. And of course, make sure to subscribe to GameXplain for more on upcoming Switch titles and other things gaming as well. Until next time, bye.